The joy of the guitar riff. This is going to be 30 minutes of electric guitar, mainly rock riff explosions. We want to discover and find out what makes them so good, why we like our favourites, and how we can write our own. And this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Any of your favourite particular rock riffs come to mind? What are your favourite? I remember you telling me that there's this... this rock CD,
the Bible
that you used to listen to,
which
was some cassette with 100 greatest rock riffs on it
that I'd walk around with, like the CD spinning in my pocket.
What were your favourites from that?
I think, I loved Sweet Child of Mine,
which we'll be exploring a lot. We're going to be really picking apart a few of our favourites. That will be one of them.
I love Supermassive Black Hole. Not really classic, it's a bit more modern, but still,
hey man, it's
great riff.
Muse are undoubtedly one of the biggest rock bands in the world, bands in the world.
Basically any AC/DC.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
So great. And then that's all I can remember.
As we found out in previous episodes of another guitar show. My favourites are definitely your classics, AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, also Fleetwood Mac. I think there's a lot of those perhaps more acoustic rock riffs that still look at a lot of the principles that we're looking at here. But first of all, I get this question in the comments on YouTube, and I've had it from students or students not being able to give me a straight answer for this. What is a rock riff? What actually makes a rock riff in terms of its core essentials? It has to be something that is repetitive. It is somewhat unique, though it doesn't have to be totally unique. And what was the other thing I wrote? Oh, recognizable. Instantly recognizable. As soon as you play 2 or 3 notes, you know what riff you're playing. 3 notes, 6 notes, you know exactly what song we're talking about. And that is the power of a rock riff that you don't get if you're, strumming 3-chord songs. That's what you don't get from those, and that is why you might want to, if you haven't already, learn some rock riffs. Really cool stuff. So repetition. Why is repetition important? Well, if we don't repeat it, we essentially have a solo or some other melodic idea. It has to repeat. If we did... it's a lick. It's a lick. If there's any kind of cool move that you would do for a solo, but it doesn't repeat, it's a lick. If it's not unique enough, as in if you use this but then do something else, again it's not that riff. There's this move is used in a lot of solos, it's used in other rock riffs, but going to that point is so signature to that. A lot of people might have gone close to kind of ripping it off because it's such a great sound, and it is just a
very simple.
It's just an E power chord, but there's something unique about it that makes it copyrightable, and that makes it makes it great. Finally, something about it that's unique. Again, it's something to make it recognizable as that song, as opposed to just playing an E power chord or just playing something that's not, you can't pinpoint to one song. And I think that goes a long way to why we like them so much. And also some of your favourite, I don't think it's any coincidence that many of our favourite rock songs, Sweet Child of Mine, any Led Zeppelin one, they have our favourite riffs in them and our favourite guitar solos in them. They're just our favourite songs. And they can have a lot of content. It's like Bohemian Rhapsody's, obviously resurfaced a little bit at the moment because of the new movie. That song is so long, it gives it a lot of time for the rock riff to really stand out, and it stands in the memory for that. Stairway to Heaven as well, Whole Lot of Love. They don't have to be just short songs, do they? But we're going to be picking these apart a little bit more. We also want to give some advice to those of you that perhaps only play acoustic at the moment, or you've started on acoustic and you're thinking about moving to electric, or you have an electric at the moment but you don't play it because it can feel alien. Did you start on acoustic or electric?
Electric.
So you started on electric, which I think is an easier option.
Yeah, definitely.
Acoustic guitar is a very physical instrument, as you will see when you look back at any of our total beginner episodes of Another Guitar Show. What point did you get an acoustic guitar?
That's a good question, actually. I can't really remember.
Was it years after or fairly soon?
It wasn't fairly soon
So
after.
you sort of committed to guitar on the electric and went from there. I didn't. I did most of my students that I've taught over the years kind of start on acoustic to learn guitar and then treat themselves to an electric guitar once they know how to play it.
Yeah.
It's a really common mentality, and it just doesn't have to be the case. You can start an electric guitar and do absolutely fine. If you already have an acoustic, electric guitar just gives you more options rather than making everything more confusing, or rather than spoiling a lot of what you've already covered on acoustic. For example, bar chords, way easier on electric guitar.
Yeah.
And if you get playing them on electric guitar, you can then learn them easier on acoustic. Goes both ways, totally fine. But let's cover a little bit of, let's start off with A Whole Lot of Love, seeing as we've done it already. So what are the notes to A Whole Lot of Love?
So,
or as you would call it, Kashmir.
Kashmir.
If you watched episode 1 of Another Guitar Show, you'll know what we're talking about.
Yep. So we're in the key of E minor, so we can already establish the type of notes we're going to be using. That's just 2 notes, so that is 7 on the E, which is a B note, and then 5 on the A, which is a D.
And when you say we know what we're using, we're referring to minor pentatonic primarily. There can be other notes used,
but most of the time you're right. Yeah.
There's a mix of the 3 that we're looking at here: Whole Lot of Love, Sweet Child of Mine, and Back in Black. I think each of them at some point in the song has a mix of major and minor, has a mix of more major scale notes in there.
Yeah.
But your first point of call, absolutely always the minor pentatonic.
Especially with this, this, what is it, 70s kind of stuff? 60s? Oh God, no.
best to not talk too much about that. He's not good at remembering song names or a bit of rock history, are you? But we've got other techniques like palm muting in there. So crucial. Even that. It's the rhythm of this which is so signature. Along with, other riffs I've played already. Without that rhythm, it isn't that song. Absolutely core to the principle of rock writing and learning rock riffs is the rhythm. When are you silent? When are we dampening? When is it open? A lot of right hand technique.
Particularly with that riff, like that,
Absolutely.
that's just chords, right?
Yeah,
so
basically.
The riff is the rhythm of the chords. That's it. There's no
Absolutely.
notes or melody to it.
Pulling it back to A Whole Lot of Love. The slide, I think, adds a lot. And again, that, as soon as you learn this riff, you've then kind of got a lick to go on to learn other solos with or other riffs. I think that's got the same kind of thing in that, but it's the same move.
And it's a slide from nowhere in particular.
Yeah, this is a weird thing, I guess. When I play that slide, I'm looking at where I'm going to end up. I'm looking at the 7th fret, so that it doesn't matter whether I go 2 frets or more.
Where
you're hearing that sort of ramp up to it.
Exactly. You're not hearing the starting point.
Like a car engine starting up or a rev, But importantly, you got to end up. Keep your eye on 7. And then with this, you could play it all with downs. But it's fast.
That just gives it more character, that one.
A lot of people struggle with getting downs and ups to sound natural, because the downs
always do sound a bit different.
You can sound very straight. So you're just trying to get the most even sound, and that sort of fine balance between the speed and playing the notes that you want to play.
The downs are never gonna sound, but I think that's the beauty of them. You've got 2 different sounds. You want to get it close. You don't want to sound totally differently. But
it's just a little bit more. It's a little bit wider strum than just playing one single.
Yeah, exactly. And it's much easier.
And I don't think there's too much more that we can look at. I'd rather just stick it to that basic riff. Of course, we have a little solo in there. So much we can do. We're doing the joy of the guitar riff in this one. Sweet Child of Mine. Do you want to play it for us? And we'll have a little jam of it. epic, is it? It's just a great sound.
The pressure of launching into those. Right? If you're a Slash on stage, you go, I cannot mess this up.
Apparently, really, especially back in the day, used to really fear it because it's very iconic.
It's a beast in itself.
And if you get one note wrong, you can hear it. And then, of course, there's a very technical guitar solo at the end of it, and a very long one. It's a very long song. It has obviously the classic riff at the start, which also includes an octave. So I would say there's an octave component to A Whole Lot of Love, and the first two notes have an octave in, and we'll look at how we can write. Perhaps not as classic a guitar riff as Sweet Child of Mine, because if we could, we probably wouldn't be sat here.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
But yes, we're going to look at what we can learn from these rock riffs and how we can come up with our own, because it's so much fun coming up with your own, creating, not just recreating. The instrument really changes.
So this one's a little bit different because this actually goes major scale.
Apparently, it started off as a technical exercise, which I can only presume was just that. Which went wrong there. But there are many different ways you can kind of play that one.
It's a little bit tricky.
Yeah, it's obviously, but it is based around a D chord basically. Yeah. We're in standard tuning here, and the original would tune down. You can not have to tune down by just playing it one note lower if you want, but just for clarity. It's sort of based around a D chord as a cage
If you've
shape.
ever seen this, it's kind of like it's that type of thing.
Yeah, it does absolutely use a fourth note from there.
Yeah.
And you can also play the same riff, which I haven't done for a while.
Yeah, you can.
Doesn't
quite sound as...
Well, it sounds great on acoustic. I used to do some...
It sounds great.
I've played that at open mic nights before, and that's how I do it on acoustic. Of course.
The reason you might be saying, well, how do we know it's major scale? Now, if it was a pentatonic, we'd be talking about D major pentatonic. But the reason it's not pentatonic is because it's got the note G in it, which is not in the pentatonic. That is the D pentatonic, and then the D major.
And all of the solos afterwards, the...
Yeah.
That's using the fifth, fourth, and third notes. That's telling you this is major scale, very much so. And if you were playing over... if you wanted to improvise your own solo over this, in the key of D minor pentatonic is going to really fight against that and not sound kind of right.
Is what it sounds.
Yeah, it's not quite going to work. The end solos, which kind of start, are much more kind of minor pentatonic based.
Key change.
It is a total
goes into B minor there, doesn't it?
So we talked about musical keys before in our acoustic guitar episode. I think it was episode 6, and the blues episode where we're learning how to solo. That was episode 7 of Another Guitar Show. We also both have a lot of courses at Your Guitar Academy and andyguitar.co.uk on what keys are and how you can start to look at this stuff. But one of the best ways to understand it is a key change. A key change in a song shows you in black and white the change of the chords, the change of the blueprint of the song, and the change of the lead notes over it. We start off in the key of D with C add 9 and G, and also an A power chord. So we've got the 1, 4, 5, the D major, G, and A. We're in the key of D. Absolutely, we're in the key of D. The fact that we've got a C chord there can be a lot of similarity between the key of G.
Yes.
There's a lot of crossover, but there's a lot of crossover in the lead notes as well. It is which note or which chord it resolves on, which is the more key point. And the fact that it starts and ends on the D solidifying that we're in the key of D. Solo comes along, getting the wah pedal out and things. We're suddenly E minor, C, B or a B7, and then A at the end. All of that, it's E minor pentatonic, and then a few more exotic scales. Is this a solo that you know well?
I can't remember how to play it, but I remember just kind of being in awe the first time I heard it.
Of course, amazing. And there is one trickier bit that I'm not going to attempt now because it is
a Dorian bit.
I don't actually know.
I imagine there would be.
We should have probably researched that.
Probably should have looked at that.
I'm pretty sure that there is a lesson on it in full on the Your Guitar Academy website, which we will link to in the description below. But I'm going to be doing tutorials on all the middle solos and as much of the rest of it as I can fathom, because it's such a classic song.
Yeah,
that is obviously the opening riff, but then when you've got one of the best opening riffs of all time, it's normally in one of the best songs of all time as well.
There's not really any techniques particularly in it, is there? But it's just the notes. There's no hammer-ons or slides or anything, is there?
That's the classic thing about many Slash solos. The impressive bits are often when he plays faster. There's a bit when he hits the wah pedal and it goes a much more technical. But other than that, it's really melodic. It's the first riff is a technical exercise. I'm sure that's how he actually came up with it. But the melody, it's very melodic. It's very like a singer would sing. It's not as licks based as you might think, until perhaps the ending when you have the sort of something a bit more kind of that. Again, a bit more E minor pentatonic, a bit more traditional rock. You know, probably
it's a riff that you could hear on loads of different instruments, whereas the one
still
we just
recognised. Doing it, you could play this song on a piano. I think
easily.
there are many like that, and there are rock riffs that only work in rock. But I love it when we can span the genres. Back in Black next. Let's give this a jam. So 2. Yeah, nice one. So obviously one of our personal favourites with this one, we have the mix of the core essential techniques of rock guitar. We have power chords, the E power chord, D, and then A, and the E minor pentatonic scale, which I would argue is the easiest scale to play on guitar. That's the scale, and then the riff. Little bend in there. And then a weird little rundown. This next part, when I was a kid and learning it, I absolutely played it like that. Right. Because I wasn't reading tab, and that's what it sounded like to me. Seeing them play it, and then after learning like that. The first time I saw that, I went, "That is bizarre."
It's really
but such a simple little bit, you know. Really works the fingers, but it does add. There's a brightness to this B note, basically. I think it just makes that. It makes those pop a lot more rather than.
I suppose it's that little bit of weirdness in a very
something, which is one of our things that we mentioned. Something unique. I do not know another song that does a similar thing to that. It's
not like that either.
It's a very odd move. So it is very unique for such a simple riff. It is repetitive, and of course it's recognisable. But one of the things that makes it recognisable is leaving space. One of the things that we did.
Yeah.
We add these naturally with little chickers, which we're muting with this hand. We can mute with this hand as well, and we just gain this noise in there to represent where the snare drum would hit. Because without it,
it's weird, isn't it?
You sort of realise how much space there is there, and that's tricky. We kind of don't like that. We want to fill it with little slides, all this kind of thing, but the space gives space for the drums to sound bigger, and it just makes everything more punchy, really tight, really hits it, and that silence
it's jarring.
Gives space for us to know where the 2 and 4 is. Da, da, da. When I do actually mute my guitar correctly. Highway to Hell's the same. Da, da. You've got, is there any wonder that 70s and 80s big snare, the big drum sound exists? because the guitars are leaving silence for them, absolutely. Such a key thing. And then, of course, you've got more power chords in the chorus. Other than the B power chord, all of those are very beginner friendly.
Yeah.
The rhythm isn't.
Yeah, that's the trick.
It completely crosses over. I don't even actually think I can tap my foot to it. Which is such a core thing with these riffs. In fact, Angus Young's the only person I've ever seen where the entire gig, it doesn't matter what's happening, and even if he's spinning round, he actually counts with his feet 1, 2, 3, 4 the entire time.
Oh, really?
And you can kind of imagine him doing it if you think about it. But watch any footage of him. He's doing that through the entire gig, even during a solo. And if you think about AC/DC, that's one of the best rhythm sections there's ever been. Simplicity, but not sacrificing any of the uniqueness or coolness that they can add at any point. Really, really cool stuff. And that is such... And with a bit more musical experience, you play it how you hear it. You're recreating it rather than having to count it or anything.
Yeah.
But being able to tap your foot to that, so... That is a real... That's a real sign of more than an intermediate player, because you've got those foundations there, and that's why it's so core to... Even if you are still learning 3-chord strumming songs, start foot tapping.
Yeah.
Just then when the rhythm... You can add all those extra things in because you've got those core rhythm techniques down. So what we're going to challenge ourselves to do now is to try and write and come up with a classic rock riff. One for the ages.
Yes.
This is what we're going to be known for,
This
Thomas.
is going to make our millions.
This is it. I mean, we'll forget about another guitar show after this because we'll have a #1 record, obviously.
Another riff show.
Another riff show. We're going to use the core principles that we've talked about already. And we'll probably have a go at is coming up with a few and pick the best one. But once we pick the best one, we stick to that one because it's so easy. When I've done riff writing in the past, and I'm sure you have as well, you come up with a few, you do something that's an amalgamation of it all, and it loses that unique, it loses the intention of what you were going for. But we're going to use power chords, we're going to use an octave in there, and we're going to use a pentatonic scale framework, and that's going to be our rock riff. I would start, personally, the instinct is with the open E string, because that's the lowest note we've got on a guitar without retuning it, and therefore we've got like the lowest point where we can jump up to, like boom, bam. So we're looking at something like that. Where could we go from there? I know most of the best rock riffs are never written this way. This is us analysing the process at every step so that you can do the same at home. Work as much on inspiration as you can, and as I say, we'll come up with a couple. But if we're designing by committee, what would you do?
So you went...
That's where we start. That's my thing, yeah.
So we could get maybe a double.
Straight away, you want to shake up the rhythm, don't you?
Yes,
Because the last thing we want to do is 1, 2, something like... It's got to shake up at some point. We've got to go off beat, which we call syncopated. The best way I've heard syncopated described is, it's how William Shatner speaks. That was John Gonn told me that, actually. That was a really cool thing. But yes, what would you add to that? With some syncopation.
Okay. So...
I like it. Da-da-down.
Pentatonic.
Straight away, all I'm doing here, because people are, oh wow, that sounds good, where did that happen from? Just repeat the bit that you do over a rhythm, over a count.
Right. So let's add some
Now,
powers.
if you do too much more than that, someone can't play lead over
Gets a
it.
bit out of hand, doesn't it?
But you could make the riff the entire focus so that you've got like one,
Yeah, Supermassive Black.
That kind of idea. So ours was. Where would you take that?
So we can flash it out.
With power chords?
Another one. Could take it a little
I
bit
like
outside.
that, but I would save that for a bridge idea.
Okay. That's about AC/DC, they do that.
Because I like leaving the space for the main riff, and then you develop. So again, is it a separate riff? Is it another song, or is it just your verse or your bridge idea? What I would probably do with that is stick the same and then change the 4th time.
Okay.
Or maybe every other. Hang on, let me think.
Yeah. So it's kind of like it's almost like a call and response.
Absolutely. That's right. Yeah.
Just blues scale. I like it. So we've taken the framework of a pentatonic minor and added the blues scale.
Absolutely.
Just one extra note.
Blue note. We're not doing anything revolutionary. In fact, half the challenge here is to do exactly the same thing that all your favourite riffs do, but different.
I'm just hoping we don't get copy striked on this video.
Probably will. It's all right. Happens all the time. So that would be. So straight away we're leaving space for that drum. So we're presuming, or when we're jamming this, we're hearing the drums in our head.
Yeah.
A great thing you could do is just get a drum loop on YouTube, or use something like GarageBand would be even better, and then put the drums on there. Which I say put the drums on there. It really is as simple as that with GarageBand, because it gives you drums to start with. Create a drum track, it's there. BPM, ba-da-bam, ba-da-bam-bam, ba-da-bam. I would argue that's around about 110.
Right.
I'm usually quite good at that, but I'm annoyed I can't check right now. But about 110.
We'll come back to that.
Maybe slower. No, it's about 104. 104.
Okay, he's gone for 104. Can we get a
104?
Producer Chris is checking the metronome.
Dun, 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 dun.
96, 97.
Oh, 96 or 97. I'm a whole 8
How much coffee have you had this morning?
What can I say? So get that drum beat on there, play along to it, record it ideally, and then, to be honest, to make sure I wasn't changing it too much, I would loop it and see if I want to develop it more. Put yourself in the point of view of the listener. When we're playing, it's using a different part of your brain. It's like if you record yourself on an answer phone message and then you hear yourself speak back. It's like, oh my God, I do not sound like that, do I? That's how different this sounds as the listener.
Yeah.
And you've got to get yourself out of your head at some point and think, does this sound... Try and judge if you sound any good or not. So what I would probably then do is kind of leave that. I stockpile riffs. Absolutely. So I'd try and, in one session, once I'm in that row, I'm like, oh, I've written a good riff. While you've got that buzz, see if you can write another one, but record that one first so that you don't lose it. Shall we do something a bit more chordy?
Okay.
What's the biggest non-key that we could do? When a riff's never written in? Maybe E flat. E flat's a really bad one because we've lost that low octave. We haven't got a lower. That's now the lowest octave that I can play.
Let's go with that.
That's a challenge. So what I would do there is probably. I'd be working with those.
Those ones. Yeah. Okay, I like it.
Yes, I should have been in the cult. I know.
Very nice. Very nice.
Now, what we've lost there is a lot of uniqueness. We have. That is not that song. That is more generic rock riff. But I'm doing something that's a little bit unique in that I'm just choosing to take off a finger. And often when I'm playing open chords, ever taking off a finger that's at the 2nd fret, it's just great for riff writing.
Well, what could you do with what you've just written to make it just that bit more unique?
Add some single notes in there. So if I had that as a background.
Okay, I like that idea.
Straight away. You always get these from somewhere when you've learned so many riffs in the past or you've heard so many songs. You've got to use that, and it doesn't take too much. It's great when it's like that. That was quite instinctive. I don't know what song I've ripped off there, but I've definitely ripped off something.
Someone's coming for you. You get knocked on the door from the lawyers.
I like that because it's the mix of the kind of power chords using. So it's a 1 to a 4, and then we've got the dominant 7th in there as well as the root notes.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing as is happening in
AC/DC.
And Sweet Child of Mine, actually.
And Sweet Child of Mine as well, yeah.
Right? She got a smile, it seems to me, it reminds me of childhood memories with everything. It's the same chords as that, essentially. But I chose to go up. I was like, we need some melody notes in there, but rather than going up a scale, I like going up an arpeggio instead. You get notes from the chord is all that means, and you're still using a scale when you do that, but you're singing from the same hymn sheet as the chord is, and that's what kind of works.
You're not using arpeggios with the power chord that you played.
No, not at all.
You're taking.
And I've used another one, you know. That's using a note not of the chord. You know, any of those notes all played at the same time, you know, they don't work. You've got to choose them. You've got to leave a bit of space.
That was the start of another one there. I like that. Oh.
I like that. That's one of my favourites is to do that. Do that same thing. It's a little bit
It's a School of Rock.
It's a little bit School of Rock and also a little bit Ballroom Blitz. Fantastic stuff. I love this. The only thing that I haven't explored yet that I wanted to explore is those similarities between a lot of the core riffs, and where you know the songwriter or the guitarist has consciously gone, I want to write a riff like that.
Yeah.
So Rage Against the Machine, we often have a lot of riffs that are either in drop D or start at the 2nd fret, so essentially in the key of F sharp. And that means that we can hit that dominant 7th note on the open, which is a very similar thing to apparently Immigrant Song's Tom Morella's favourite riff, and that's why he does a lot of riffs in the key of F sharp. Remembering your favourite bands and your influences and doing similar things to that, whilst having something else in other influences as well. It's a really tricky thing. It's why a lot of bands have a great one album.
And they don't have anything else.
To be successful, we need to do that again. That's really difficult to do the same thing.
One thing to add on is the attitude you played that with. You know, there's such a big difference between and really digging in with the pick, getting a bit of pressure and a bit of attitude on it. Like when I saw you playing, I could see the arm really smacking the string, getting that aggression into it.
Absolutely, which is something that comes very natural to me on the thicker strings, digging in with the pick, and it's something that I therefore really struggled playing quickly or doing lead lines on the thinner strings, because doing that came naturally, and doing that, it's a totally different angle because I'm actually resting on the strings and getting that to sound natural. I actually found I had to hold back so much more, and on the thicker strings the joy was pulling that up a little bit as well, because a lot of the tone that I like isn't from the pedal as it is.
No, it's from actually, the attack.
Yeah, it's from the attack of the strings and playing louder, playing heavy.
It's a very touch-sensitive instrument.
Absolutely.
You can get a massive difference of sounds just from the way that you pick the thing, you know. And then the like touches of vibrato and touches of little bends just dragging the pitch make all the difference with this. You know, it's all about the attitude and the attack you hit these with, rather than just the notes.
I agree totally. So that's where we'll wrap this up. Thank you so much for checking out another guitar show. Remember to subscribe to the Your Guitar Academy YouTube channel and the Andy Guitar YouTube channel, because we go between the two with every episode. This is your free 30-minute guitar lesson every Sunday. This one's been about riff writing. Any other ideas that you guys have, let us know in the comments, and we will see you next Sunday. Bye for now.